If you took my advice while working through this kit, you won't have to worry much more about security. Strong, hard-to-guess passwords and making lots of backups are always your most important strategies anyway. WordPress users also need to stay on top of updates to make sure nothing becomes vulnerable. My podcast site has been hacked one time in the past when it was taken over by Tunisian rebels for a couple days, but it was easy to restore from my backups and hasn't happened again since I started using Cloudflare. If you didn't sign up for domain privacy with your web host, you'll want to reconsider that if you have the extra $10 and are looking for the most secure situation possible. Cloudflare adds a nice buffer to keep you protected, but having your domain registration details hidden from a Whois search of internet records can also help make it more difficult to attack you online. It's even a nice insurance policy knowing how much harder it would be to come after you for any kind of copyright misunderstandings without basic information like what country you live in. WordPress users can also find lots of extra security plugins to do things like limiting login attempts, which I do recommend, but the fewer plugins you attach to your site the better, and we don't need to be too paranoid. I have my Cloudflare set on low security, and I like the email obfuscation feature, but I leave the hotlink protection off. In the same way I hope that my podcast episodes get around to all corners of the internet, I really don't mind too much if somebody uses an image from my site and shares the direct link somewhere. It then becomes another road that leads back to me, and inbound links like that from other pages on the internet can help Google scores if they're from trustworthy sites. You'll notice any unusual activity by checking your traffic logs and can always turn it back on, or just change the file name a bit if anybody abuses the privilege. Some other security-related features that you might be interested in knowing about can be found in your cPanel controls. The security section gives you options to password protect certain directories, deny specific IP addresses from visiting your site, or turn on hotlink protection if you weren't doing that with Cloudflare. You also have options for whether or not the files in your directory folders stay hidden or can be listed publicly by visitors. Scroll to the Advanced section and select Indexes. Now left-click once on Public HTML. The default system setting will allow somebody to type in one of your directories like images and see a list of everything that you have in there. That might be okay for some of your folders, but for better security and more privacy, you should change this to no indexing and then save. There's also another way that we can control this, so hit the Home button, find your file manager, and then open up the public HTML directory. When you right-click over one of the folders, you'll see a few of the same options from the security area. Click on the one right at the bottom to open up the Index Manager. This will let you choose what happens when somebody types the address of this directory into a browser without the rest of a specific file name. Because we already protected the whole public HTML folder, the default system setting here is the same as no indexing, which means that nobody can see the files in that directory. Unless you share an exact URL with them, they won't know what's there. But if it's a folder like Podcast that contains only MP3 episodes of your show that are already public, enabling directory listing can make it really easy for people to flip through them all when they start to add up and you have a lot available. With the contents of the folders kept private by leaving it set at the system default, it shows up as just a blank screen when somebody types in that address. I have my podcast folder set on standard indexing so the files aren't hidden and get listed in alphabetical order like this. You should incorporate some kind of search bar tool into your site that also helps people find their favorite episodes more easily, and your RSS feed is a much nicer way to show off these files. But adjusting the Index Manager is another display and easy access option that some of your visitors might appreciate. Don't forget to hit save if you made any changes, but most of your folders should always be left at the default setting or no indexing to keep the contents hidden. One thing that you'll hear a lot about these days is called SSL, which stands for Secure Socket Layer. It's a security technology that encrypts the connection between your server and a visitor's web browser so that data can't be intercepted on its way between the two. When you see a green padlock beside the URL in your browser, it means that the site is using a secure SSL connection. In the past, only websites that were accepting credit cards needed to have this in place to protect the information of their customers. Recently, though, Google has started to prioritize secure sites in their search results, regardless of whether or not payments are involved. A lot of people will feel more comfortable on a website that shows the green padlock. Even if you're just gathering email addresses or have a contact form that people can use to send you messages, eventually you might want to set this up. It can be a pretty complicated process for beginners though, and I would suggest hiring an expert to do that for you. Your Cloudflare account already gives you a free SSL that encrypts the connection part of the way between them and your visitors. If you want more protection than that, you should look into a free service like Let's Encrypt, or be ready to pay for a certificate from one of the trusted companies like Komodo that can be installed through your web host. Unless you're building a serious online store, you should be okay with what you have now. You can even accept PayPal payments without doing any of this, because all of that processing takes place on their site, not yours. At this point in the kit, you have a really solid foundation for your home base and a much more efficient website for podcast delivery. The next module gets into some ideas that you can think about when you're ready to expand your reach a little more and explore other ways to improve the musical experience for your fans.